This is Brownie's Podcast.
Welcome to Brownie's Podcast. Campbell Brown, Jonathan Brown, myself, Dean Thomas. Beck's here. How you going, my friend? You're all good, Beck?
I am recovering from a long weekend.
Mate, these young people, they don't know how to do it.
They can't back up like they could in the old days. Hey, the rounds of footy just keep getting better and better, JB.
Jesus!
It's unbelievable. It's great to be here. I tell you what, it's great to be alive when the cashie circuit, the dream is still alive for one of us.
Mine got snatched away from me.
Brown dog, gone. Oh, I asked him how grand final week was looking. He goes, it's looking pretty bare now after his Hawks got cleaned up. I tell you what, my secretary's working overtime at the moment, taking offers.
All right, let's have a listen to the Brown household when the siren went. This is astonishing.
3, 2, 1.
Now, I'd love to say that was Liv, but I think that was Jackie Boy, wasn't it?
I think it was Jackie.
This scream specifically. That's Jackie Boy.
It's spine tingling, isn't it?
It's a horror movie.
Your neighbours
Mate, no
would have been
interest,
calling the cops.
I tell you what, isn't he a front runner? He had a mate sleeping over, so they're up the back playing whatever they were playing, Nintendo or
Atari.
Xbox, and 3 minutes to go. I said, 5 points down, boys. They come rushing out, and did they jump on? They jumped onto a good thing, and away they went. They celebrated like they watched the whole game. But how good was big Joey Danaher in the late moments? Like those last two efforts, firstly that kick from the boundary, and then the mark on Sam Taylor. Joe Danaher is becoming an exceptional finals player, Brown Dog.
Big game player. He was unbelievable in the grand final last year, and when the team needed him to stand up, he did. Like first the kick, wrong side for a left footer was unbelievable.
That was deliberate too.
Yeah, it was. The free kick was there. There's no doubt about that. Poor old Sam Taylor would love his last few minutes back. And the thing is, no one beats Sam Taylor in the one-on-one marking contest. He's the best fullback in the competition by a mile.
Brown Dog, I'll back you up here. Guess what? How many's he lost this year in one-on-one contests?
For the whole season?
Whole season.
Oh, I'm going to say like 15.
2.
Jesus!
And you're saying that one of them was the Joe Danaher mark in the last 2 minutes?
He'd only lost one 1v1 contest for the whole season up until that very moment.
So there you go, mate. So for him to beat Sam Taylor in a one-on-one, like a proper, genuine finals pressure one-on-one, clunk that mark, and then go back and kick it. I know it looks quite elementary, to us watching the TV, but that just goes to show how bloody big that moment was.
Let's see what Jack Brown thinks of the season. Wow.
I can't believe that stat, JB. For the whole season, I know he's missed a few weeks with some injuries and he ruptured his testicle, but he's lost 2 one-on-one contests.
Absolutely. 2 one-on-one contests, and that was that last one. It was fantastic by Joe Danaher. At the end of the day, Charlie Curnow gets celebrated as probably up until Hogan's the last 10 weeks. Charlie Curnow was universally regarded probably as the best forward in the competition. Joe Danaher has been a more valuable forward than Charlie Curnow the last 2 years.
Yep.
Joe Danaher was Brisbane's best player in the grand final. If they'd have won it, may have won the Norm Smith medal, kicked more goals than any other player in the finals last year. And then he's delivered on the biggest stage and the biggest moment the other night. So you can't question Joe Danaher. When everyone talks about the good and the bad of Joe Danaher, tell you what, he consistently stands up, and his efforts at Brisbane have been outstanding.
I thought Archie was involved in absolutely everything.
Yes.
Underrated
Played
game.
on Whitfield and kicked goals as well.
I love the fact that Zorko had a quietish night, snuck forward and kicked an important goal. But,
loved it. 2 important goals it was.
Jasper Fletcher, a young man with a big moment, and then obviously Ashcroft helped change the game. So the blend between the experienced guys doing their thing and some of the young guys, Wilmot, mate, did a great job down back. So
on Jones, Brisbane actually, Chris Fagan gets criticised a lot for his strategy and his coaching staff. At the end of the day, there is something in sticking with your players. And I thought their strategy was good. They got to some matchups, did a really good job with some of the matchups. I thought young Ainsworth did a good job, and Brett Daniels, you're right. You mentioned Wilmot. on Jones. So some key matchups. He stuck with Payne, who had a really good last quarter on Hogan. At the end of the day, though, 44 points down, Brown Dog. He stared the Dragon in the eye, Fags. He said, I'm trusting my players. And they turned it around. And that's why Fags is loved by his players, because he backs them in.
I didn't like the Payne-Hogan matchup. That had danger written all over it, and every single time the ball went in there, Hogan seemed to win it.
Except for late, though. So you got to give him credit. He stood up, Payne, late.
Yeah. And let's talk about GWS. Well, as good a win as it was, 44 points down, playing interstate against a side that's dominating, is a great comeback. But is it systemic now for GWS? They did it the week before against Sydney. They get out to this big lead. They can't hold on.
Brother,
they lost another close one against Collingwood last year in the prelim. Like, is it in their heads? Is it too physical a game style that they just can't maintain it for the full 4 quarters? Because their best is as good as any in the comp, but you can't come to a screeching halt the way that they do, and clearly they get the jitters up a bit once a team kicks a few goals and gets some momentum.
What are you doing for GWS? Because it's 2 years of having one of the best teams in the league, and you've got nothing to show for it.
Nothing.
So you go into year 3 of this, pretty much the same team.
Heartbreak.
How hard is it to climb that mountain again?
It's bloody hard, because in the moments you got to get it done. And at the moment, the GWS, well, in this final series and late last year, they didn't get it done in key moments. And that's what it comes down to. So Adam Kingsley spoke about the strategy and the plans late in games when you're in front or if you're behind, what you have to do. They rehearsed it the day before the game, all these sorts of things. But at the end of the day, that's why great players and great leaders get lauded, because of what they do in moments. So Hodgie had one of the great teammates, one of the great leaders in their college.
Brown.
I had Michael Voss, because they just have this innate ability to make the correct decisions late in games when it's at its most pressurised, Brown Dog. And at the moment, GWS haven't got enough of those players that are able to do that. Yes, I know Caniglio went off earlier in the game with an injury, but some of their other guys just weren't able to get it done. It's as simple as that, Brown Dog. Now, what do you put that down to? I don't think it's a lack of planning.
Yeah.
It's a lack of composure in the moment.
And like, this might sound a little bit old school and silly, but I was always taught if a side kicks 3 or 4 goals in a row and has all the momentum and you can't, for whatever reason, stop it, start a wrestle or a melee or something like a fight, right?
Do something.
Which just takes their mind off setting up at a structure and a stoppage or whatever, right? Just like maybe they just get a bit too passive and just rely on a Toby Green or a Tom Green in the middle, and then some of the players out there get a little bit overawed by the moment. There's no doubt that Sydney and Brisbane, when you're playing in the last quarter and you're chasing a big deficit, you roll the dice a bit. You're being way more aggressive than you usually would. You get on the fly at stoppages, you give handballs and things like that. But that is what seems to bring GWS undone. They can't stop.
I love our game at the moment, Brown Dog. I love the rule changes that were made a few years ago, and teams have got better and better at using up that momentum, using up that energy in that short space of time. Brisbane kicked 5 goals in 18 kicks. Like, it was an unbelievable turnaround from 44 points down. All of a sudden, you go back in the game. And the momentum swings in games is amazing.
Yeah.
And you're right. The difference between what will be eventually the premiers and the also-rans of the finals competition this year is how you can limit the damage when the opposition has momentum.
Yes.
And you're right, Dog. At the moment, GWS aren't able to limit the opposition when they're up and about, which inevitably that'll happen in every game when you're playing against good sides. And they didn't do it last week against Sydney, and they couldn't do it twice against Brisbane, that 5-goal period late in the third, and of course that last 20 minutes in the fourth quarter.
Poor old Brent Daniels had an unbelievable year, was unlucky not to be All-Australian forward pocket. He's just signed a really big long-term contract with the Giants, been brilliant, but unfortunately for him, that decision to take the advantage, soccer off the ground, instead of just...
My pet hate, Brown Dog.
Yeah, instead of picking it up, giving it back to Jesse Hogan, taking 30 seconds off the clock, he'd go back and kick another goal, probably wins them the game, and that's the sort of moment that people will always remember. You know what I mean? No matter what he does from here on in, it's like the Fraser Brown tackle, right, in a prelim.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You'll think of the great comeback and the Danaher goal, but you'll also unfortunately think about the Daniel Soccer, JB.
And what about the 50-metre penalty he gave up late in the last quarter as well, which resulted in the Brisbane Lions goal? Didn't give it back to the right player. Clearly knew it was Dunkley to give back to.
Actually,
when they held it, he was trying to stall the play. The umpire said, give it back now. He gave it away, and they end up 50.
He gave it to Dunkley, and it was to Big Oscar. That was
the other way around.
But in the moment, Dunkley was calling for the ball. Can the umpire not show a little bit of discretion
Common
there and
sense.
say, hey, look, you got a bloke calling for the ball. Sometimes you're at the back of a pack or whatever. You don't actually know who the hell you're giving the ball to.
When that
I thought that was a bit harsh, JB.
When that 50-metre was given away, there was a microphone near Adam Kingsley.
But it was a big win, and that was. I didn't think the Hawks Port Adelaide game would get topped on Friday night, but it did.
Still on the Brisbane game. This is what we're talking about to fly about. A 30-point, I know it was 44 points your boys came back from, John, but a 30 to 35-point deficit is commonly regarded now as a surmountable lead.
It is.
It's amazing.
Well, it was 31 points early in the last, Dino. When
wild.
Toby Green kicked that goal, it was back to 31. So it wasn't just from the middle of the third quarter.
No.
They had to reload again, and I thought McInerney was fantastic in the last quarter after lowering his colours for the first 2.5 quarters. But, it was terrific. Brisbane had a lot of players down on the night. So there's still a lot of upside. Lockie Neal had one of his quieter games. So, they'll be buoyed by that. They'll be confident they can go to the MCG against a team that's been a bit of a rival, been a bit of a nemesis in final series. They cleaned them up 2 years ago in a prelim final. Geelong did against Brisbane, so they'll be keen to turn the tables there. Going to the MCG, the home of football, Geelong will be confident that they can out-strategise the Brisbane Lions. But at the end of the day, when you get to the Final Four, it's all things are even, I think.
Absolutely.
Because it comes down to what's between the ears.
Yeah, dog, it's all over. Yeah. I'm so sad about Hawks. Because next year I won't give a about them. I don't think the greater football public will care about them like we did this month. And they came close, man.
Yeah, well, you know what? They didn't come to play in the first quarter and a half. I thought that they got completely
they were smack between the eyes, though, weren't they?
Outworked, and they were overawed. Yeah. And Kenny Hinkley clearly had his side absolutely up to the level that he needed to be.
Kenny's a psychopath. Right? The man's a psychopath. I
loved the way that they played, Port Adelaide. I thought that Hawthorn had no right to be even close to Port. 4 of their first 5 goals were free kicks to them.
Yeah.
Right? The Dylan Moore free kick for a dump tackle wasn't there. The free kick to Marbia Chol for a sling tackle.
One angle of that dump tackle.
Dubious.
His head bounced off the turf.
I don't give a it bounced off the moon.
Off the moon.
It just wasn't there.
It was.
They got Tiggy touched with free kicks at crucial stages, and people out there, one-eyed Hawk supporters will go, but Hawthorn, they won the free kick. Sorry, Port Adelaide, won the free kick count or whatever.
It's not an argument.
It just depends on where the free kicks are paid. And I thought if they'd won the game on Friday night, they would have dead set stolen it from a much better prepared Port Adelaide side. I loved Kenny Hinkley having words to Jack Ginnivan after the game, right?
That got blown
you
up.
Loved it. Well, you're the first Hawthorn person that said that because most of the footy world's been...
They've overreacted.
Not on the fence, but they've been a bit, look, at the end of the day, that's the emotions, except for Hawthorn people. Lee Matthews, Luke Hodge, Jordan Lewis and Dermot Brereton have gone bananas, in their criticism of Kenny Hinkley. However, you're the first Hawthorn player to actually go, no, I'm backing Kenny up a bit here.
I think $20,000 is excessive.
Ridiculous.
I can understand the please explain.
Yeah.
But Jason McCartney got $20,000 for actually making contact with Tommy Papley, an opposition player. This is not even in the same ballpark.
Clarko at the start of the year.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Webster.
And tell me a person in the football world that would have been under more pressure than Ken Hinkley in the week leading up to that game. No one. So, of course, this is a tribal, passionate sport. Yeah. He's just had arguably one of the best wins of his career.
Yeah.
He's standing there. Sure, in an ideal world, we want our coaches,
Yes.
you know, to not say anything.
Yeah.
But you got Jack Ginnivan over there, right?
Yeah.
And he's just done the plane and saying, mate, you're not flying anywhere. You're not flying to Sydney, son.
And above all, it was entertaining to watch.
I can tell you right now, when Port Adelaide play Hawthorn next year and Jack Ginnivan snaps a goal to kick
Aeroplane.
maybe the winner, he's doing the aeroplane.
And it'll
right?
become a thing.
It is theatre. It'll be pumped up on the networks. We all loved it. I know a lot of people, you know, holier than thou. Or you got a 60-year-old man, you know, abusing a 21-year-old.
Not a lot of people. Not a lot of people. Just Hawthorn people,
Hawthorn
Brown
people.
Dog.
Yeah.
Just Hawthorn people.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a Hawthorn person, and I loved what Kenny did. I loved the fact that Sis had words back.
Yeah.
I loved everything about it.
Yeah.
But if you were going
Yes.
to run your mouth,
Yeah.
right, the opposition can use it as motivation. And if it comes back to bite you on the arse and you lose a game that you should win, and we all thought that Hawthorn was going over there and should win, then every now and then the opposition, players, coaches, supporters, whoever, have the opportunity to spit a little bit of venom back at you, and
It's
that's
all in the
exactly what
game.
Kenny did.
We're adults. It's entertaining.
We are in the entertainment industry. You're spot on, Dino. No question about that. I loved when he got asked in the post-game press conference, did you use Jack Ginnivan's post as motivation during the week? Kenny replied with, fair bit.
Oh, that's good.
I know.
Mate, Kenny has hot sauce for blood. He's
It's just... I mean, he might have saved his career, right? He might have saved his career. He wasn't swearing. He wasn't being demonstrative. It was an aeroplane.
Kenny is a loose man.
Yeah, but he is though. You know
Remember
what?
when Kenny-
You know
Kenny
what?
was coaching
He's got that
Campbell
dog
down-
in him. He's got that dog in him.
I love it.
Actually, sorry, when Kenny was coaching Mortlake back in southwest Victoria, my old man was runner for Koroit, the opposition, and him and Dad got in an altercation. He whacked the old man and got reported for whacking the runner.
Also, Sicily kept, because I'm a lip reader, Sicily kept repeating, you're a smug C word. That's what he kept saying.
Is that right?
Absolutely,
The only
100%.
thing that I...
What do you reckon Jack Ginnivan's actions would get interpreted to? They did get interpreted as,
Right.
you've been a smug, whatever.
I don't even think Jack would care. The
No,
only
well, that's
thing,
right. Who cares?
Yes.
It's all the theory of the game.
Yeah.
So, I thought that some of the Hawthorn people completely overreacted, right? But the only thing it did take a little bit away from, which was disappointing, was it was during Luke Bruce's 300th celebrations, and that sort of got lost a little bit
That's
in
on
the
Sis as
in the
well,
wash.
because he could have just appreciated Bruce for the moment, but he was just focused on Kenny.
You got to understand, emotions are running
understand
that high, and he's the player that's just hit the post, like as the captain of the club with a winning kick. It's good to see. Hey,
Yeah, man.
that's why we love this great game.
Who pays that 20K? Does it have to come out of his
It
bank?
will come out of Kenny's pocket.
Is there any way
unfortunately.
they can make it like sort of go away with some cook in the box?
Can't the clubs pay that though?
Well,
can't
maybe
the
soft
clubs
cap. It'll be in the soft
come
cap
to a
then.
soft cap, but you'd be willing to pay the tax on that. If
I wonder
Kenny
what would happen
survives
if
because
Kenny-
he probably goes. He loses that. He'd probably lose his job,
Correct.
doesn't he?
I wonder what would the AFL do if Kenny just said, you know what, I'm not paying it. That's just excessive.
Oh no,
It's grossly excessive.
They bring the hammer down, wouldn't they?
What, you can't-
I would
can't
have thought
coach
the
in a
amount of
prelim?
times he's apologised and come and said, "Look, I got carried away in the moment." It feels as if they're not going to fight it. They just want to move on and focus Friday night on Sydney, who they've beaten the last eight
Yes,
times.
there you go. So all
It's
of a
unbelievable,
sudden,
little anomaly, isn't it? All of a sudden, it's game on.
these tiny margins in games,
Yeah.
GWS, had they held on and won, could have gone on and won a flag. Brisbane.
2 years in a row.
Brisbane can go on and win the flag now, and we'll look back at the comeback.
Yeah.
Port Adelaide, like they've got the wood over the Swans.
Yeah. Hey, John,
It's great.
Congratulations to the Lions. You're the only team out of the four to still be here.
Yes, yeah, and got to travel as well. So, arduous trip, go home, go back to Melbourne, but they're comfortable at the MCG. They've got to defy history, no doubt about it. We travelled in 2003 3 times. However, it was broken up with a game in between. We got beaten by Collingwood in the first week because we finished top 4. Then we went home to Adelaide. Then we played away in Sydney, and then we came back for the grand final and beat Collingwood in the return game. So it's been done before, but just not 3 weeks in a row.
Speaking of that dynasty team, Fly told that story last week about John getting a mohawk in New Orleans, and Jonathan found an image of it. Can we put it on socials, Becky? He looks, mate, you look like a world class. It's unbelievable.
I look like a punk, and the old barber gave me this product called Hard Up Cement.
Yes.
I didn't know whether it was a sex lubricant or for your hair, but it was for your hair, and I looked like a punk rocker. And I wore it with pride during my time there in New Orleans, along with my great mate Timmy Notting. But we've got that photo, so definitely get to the Instagram pages there. But no, it's great. It was a great weekend of footy. I loved it. I was at Port Adelaide on Friday night. Sorry, we were at the Adelaide Oval Friday night. And the crowd and the energy in the crowd was unreal. I just want to give something to Zach Butters. Look, Zach Butters clearly would have been jabbed up, would have been heavily jabbed up with his ribs. But Zach Butters and Connor Rosie, two of their young leaders, to go out and do what they did and especially apply themselves to the defensive part of the game was sensational. And that's what you've got to do. When you're playing at home, you've got to allow the crowd to be involved in the game. And those boys got the crowd involved. Connor Rosie had a big tackle in the first 2 minutes, holding the ball, kicked the goal. I think they had 5 holding the ball, free kicks in the first quarter. That gets the crowd engaged. And when you got 50,000 crazy supporters, or 45, and there was pretty handy amount of Hawthorn supporters, but you've got your home crowd. They were energised from that, and I felt like they were able to sort of surge the players all throughout the night, Brown Dog, and that was just great being there and such a great night.
Good seeing young players stand up too. I thought Jace Burgoyne played the game of his life. I thought that Logan Evans handled the pressure of finals footy magnificently. I thought that Jordan Sweet, the former Bulldog, who couldn't get a game, he played on Meek and won that battle. So there were little wins all over the park for Port, and it'll leave Hawthorn, thinking, well, great year, fantastic season. We didn't expect it, but it certainly was an opportunity lost.
Yeah, I think you said it well in the post-game, John. This will never happen again. This exact scenario where, weirdly, everyone was going for him, it felt like.
Because they've got expectation now leading into next year.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, we know what to expect from him.
How good's the Wizard?
He's a freak, mate.
Mate, geez, he lit him up, and now all of a sudden he's got really accurate during the final series when he couldn't hit the side of a barn in the first half. I was asked by the producer to wear a Wizards hat at 3/4 time, and I said, absolutely no way. But, I'm not wearing a Wizards hat. I'm a Brisbane Lions supporter. If it was Charlie Cameron, I might get up and dress as John Denver and sing Country Road. But I'm not wearing a Wizards hat. But you've got to admire that. The crowd's jumped on board.
If you put that Wizard hats on, Pangy would have seen that. That would have got a run on front bar over and over again.
The great thing about Brody not being in here today is that he won't be able to edit all the things that I say inappropriately in this podcast out of the potty. I just want to give a big shout out to someone, really, really courageous guy over the weekend.
They're eating the dogs.
Is my man Donald Trump.
They're eating the dogs.
They've tried to assassinate him again, right? They've shot at him again.
Oh.
This is a man that's a mix between Jack Bauer, Casey Ryback, John Rambo, James Bond, and Ethan Hunt.
They're eating the dogs.
He can't be killed, baby. That's all I want to say.
You love him, you love him, and he's a bit of a dickhead, I've got to say.
Dog.
John?
What about John from... what about Johnny from Die Hard?
Oh, yeah, chuck it in.
John McClane.
Yeah, John McClane.
McClane
him in as well.
To be clear, the image you showed me, the guy in the mustard jacket, that's not Brownie. That's Sharmo. Brownie's the other guy.
No, that's Timmy Notting.
Timmy Notting.
Well, that was me presenting him with his third down low
Best
medal.
on.
He won the down low medal for best on ground in that magnificent football trip in 2003 to New Orleans.
After the ads, we're going to, speaking about drinking trips and whatnot, Jonathan has presented me with some audio that it's 2 minutes of just, it's like a symphony, Jonathan. We'll get to it, and then we'll have a look at the two prelims going up. Back in a second. Welcome back to Brownie's podcast. We've got a lot to get to, including we'll do a bit more worship of Joe Danaher, I think, because that was insane. But before
would he be the only player that doesn't live in the same state that he plays, boys?
What?
Yeah, no, he lives down in Byron Bay.
What?
Yeah, so he drives up an hour and a half every training session.
It's not that far.
Well,
mate, it'd be 2 hours probably. Be close to 2 hours. But hey, he loves it. He's an unusual character. He doesn't watch a hell of a lot of footy. sits down there and enjoys his time down there in isolation. I'm tipping they wouldn't know a hell of a lot about the Brisbane Lions down there, Brown Dog.
Byron.
They'd know nothing. They'd know things about hash cookies
and dream catchers.
dream catchers,
Jonathan.
Buteyko breathing courses.
Speaking of driving an hour and a half, so Friday night I watched the footy with a group of mates. One of them has a place in the Peninsula, and they also live in the city. And during the week, they said, we're all going to mine to watch the footy. So I got in the car and drove to the Peninsula, hour and a half. And then I realised there was no cars in the driveway. So I knew the code to get into the house, kicked my shoes off. And then the penny dropped that everyone was meeting at the house in the city.
Oh, no. You're kidding me.
I drove to the Peninsula for no reason. Then there was still 45 minutes before the game started, so I drove back to the city.
You drove back?
That is unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
What a waste of time.
3 hours in the goddamn Suzuki Swift.
Was it fun, though, just by yourself?
Listen to some podcasts.
Yeah? Did you listen to Brownie's podcast?
I listen to Brownie's podcast predominantly.
I wonder how listeners are up this week. He's listened to Brownie's podcast 5 times. Record listenership.
All right, we're gonna get into this guy. His name is, what's his name, Jonathan? He's got a strong name. Kyle Ferguson. Now, he's got into a bit of trouble because of, I'd say, his drinking. But anyway, have a listen to this entire 2-minute interview, and then we'll discuss afterwards.
Well, I do get on the piss a lot, but normally I have a fun time on the piss. We go out to properties, we shoot shit, we do burnouts, typical 20-year-old stuff. Well, what basically happened was yesterday I got a serve in the mail. It's telling me I'm banned from basically every pub, club, or alcohol establishment here in WA for about a year, which is, I think it's kind of un-Australian, to be honest. I'm banned from everywhere. Thank you, WA Police. It was over just a little incident happened at a nightclub where a bouncer chucked me wallet, so I hit him. Well, I was out in the night drinking with a bunch of Irish bloods, really good friends of mine. And we went out to Paramount because I've never been there before. And my ID's got a chip in it. It's like cracked. Oh, Jesus. So, as you can see, there's a big chip on the bastard from where I've stacked it on a motorbike and just haven't got it replaced because it can't be stuffed to. So this bloke pulled me off out of the line onto the street and said, look, mate, you can't come in here, not just because of your ID, just because you're dressed like a redneck. And it was like, oh, really? And he goes, well, this is unfair. And he goes, chucks me wallet and ID across the road, and he goes, what are you going to do about it? And the only reasonable thought going through my head was to hit him. And I threw the first punch. To be honest, I did muck up. It was my own mistake. But I don't think a ban for a year from every pub in WA is fair. I call that just the abuse of power. Someone most probably does not like me in the higher-ups of WA Police. I'm most probably daughter or something. Yeah. What? God, no. I love the square bear, the old sugarcane champagne a little too much to not give that up. But no, look, I've got mates, and Jimmy Brings is an online alcohol service, so I'm pretty sure those are allowed. I just can't walk into an alcohol establishment. My mum's disappointed in me, Dad's disappointed, but oh well, that happens. But all my mates say I'm a bloody legend. I need to get it framed, and there's certainly 6 other states I can go to drink.
Oh my God!
There's a lot to unpack.
Drive there, boys.
All right, first of all,
he had a cowboy hat on in the interview.
He did, yeah. First of all, his pronunciation of Jesus.
Jesus.
The Paramount is the Paramount in WA. It's one of the most spoken
nightclub.
And what do you reckon? How did he describe booze? Sugarcane.
The sugarcane champagne.
Yeah.
The old square bear.
I've never heard it called the square bear.
Neither have I. What does that mean?
What about how come you're not coming? How come you couldn't get in there because the bouncer thought I was dressed like a redneck? So the only reasonable thought going through my head then was to hit him.
And then he goes straight away. Now I did muck up. That was wrong. Kyle Ferguson.
You live and learn. He's just a young man.
Unbelievable stuff.
Quintessential Aussie ochre.
Jimmy Brings would have been wrapped for the mention there.
He fit in a plug somehow. It's unbelievable. All right, let's go to the games this weekend. Port, Sydney. Have Port played their big one? That's my fear.
No, I don't think so. They'll get up again. They will get up again. They are a good side when they are committed to the contest. That's what I'll say. I don't know what happened in week 1. against Geelong if they just thought it would happen, right? But they were a different side on the weekend. If they can bring that same level of energy
and heat,
and their young blokes can step up again. And I thought Georgiadis was outstanding. I don't know if this was coincidence, JB. You can answer this. Marshall in for Charlie Dixon. I know Marshall got subbed out sore, but were they a better structured forward line without Big Charlie?
Yeah, they were, no doubt about it. Willie Rioli was unbelievable.
Willie?
But you're right about the big. Willie's a star.
Oh,
we know how important
God.
he was when they won the flag in 2018 West Coast Eagles. He's so important. He's the glue that holds that forward line together. I love Georgiades' game. He's spot on. I actually love the key forwards' response this weekend after a lot of people were writing them off last week about their influence on finals. You look at Danaher, you look at Jesse Hogan up the other end, you look at Sicily in the last quarter for Hawthorn, and you look at Mitch Georgiades' performance. You need your big key forwards, and you need them firing, and those boys were able to stand up and deliver. So, yeah, no, I'm looking forward to I love a matchup when a team's had a wood over the other team, and they're the underdogs. So, for whatever reason, whatever Port Adelaide does, when they bring the heat, when they bring the pressure, Sydney don't seem to be able to handle that at the moment. If Port can get their matchups right, Willem Drew's going to obviously have a really important matchup. He's going to shut some of the other boys away. They're a fighter's chance. But at the end of the day, you can't underestimate the week off.
Yes.
And the week off when they're freshened up.
It's Sydney.
And Callum Mills has done his hammy on the track during the week, so he's going to be out and fighting to get through to a granny should they make it. I love the fact that for the first time this year, a player went to Ambrosio, the winger. Willem Drew went to him.
Yeah.
He's just been rolling around the wing without anyone near him, and he's a beautiful user. So you'd think that Drew will go to probably
and then the
Warner.
move, Brown Dog, like this is brave in the coach because quite often you put a cooler on someone and it's working. You're reluctant to make a change in game.
Yeah.
So obviously Jai Newcombe looked like he was going to be the Hawthorn player that was going to win the game from in the clinches. So it would have been a tough. That's right. A tough decision by the Port Adelaide coach staff to make that switch. They got Drew then on to Newcombe, and he did a good job. Newcombe still got some touches, but he's able to just quell his influence and obviously help them get over the line.
So do you send Drew to Heaney or Warner?
Well, he can play a bit more forward, I feel like as in deeper forward. So that Drew's probably not as comfortable deep. So my tendency then would go to Warner because he's going to be more around the ball. Now they do something with Goulden as well. I'm not sure, but Drew played on the wing the other night against Ambrosio, so he could go to Goulden as well. So it's just going to be interesting to see where that settles up. That'll be a great game. I'm expecting Sydney to turn it around.
Yeah.
I think Sydney will win, but I wouldn't be surprised if Port Adelaide knocked them over. Then Saturday twilight, 5:15 p.m, MCG. What's the crowd figure, Brown Dog? Do they get over 80?
I think they'll get 80, we're not going to get sort of high 90s like we did for the Doggies and Hawks game, but certainly 80,000 will pack the MCG. All the Geelong supporters will drive down the highway and, I can't really decide on who wins this game. I think it's a genuine 50-50 contest.
Four states represented left in the finals. That's pretty good. The AFL will be pretty chuffed about that.
You sort of need it. Brisbane contest work's going to have to be more consistent. Contest and pressure for them. Help with their territory. They can't allow the Geelong forwards, especially those little nipsy forwards, those little fast blokes like Myers and Close and the like, and Jeremy Cameron to get up the field and turn them around, Brown Dog. That's where Brisbane will be vulnerable. So they can't allow that to turn into a slingshot game.
Does Scotty even consider bringing Tomahawk in or not? Their VFL side lost last weekend, so there's no football for him.
You know what, Chris Scott. He'll always have a surprise for you. But I'd be surprised if he did this. I thought Shannon Neal did his job. I thought that team that beat Port Adelaide were fantastic. I think he'd be reluctant to make any changes, Dog.
Yeah,
what's the best grand final combination left in terms of spice, do we think?
Well, Sydney Geelong happened 2 years ago, didn't it?
It was the worst grand final in modern history.
Yeah, it was a complete letdown.
I'd tell you what I would love. I'd love Port Adelaide to win and Brisbane to win, and then it's a repeat of the 2004 grand final 20 years later, and then Brisbane smash them off the park for redemption.
If Port Adelaide did win, there might be There might be the old Williams, Alan Scott, you were wrong moment too for Kenny Hinkley. He'd have a few people fair and square lined up in the gun.
If this is how Jack Brown reacted after a semi, what happens? What happens if you win the grand final, John?
It's going to be astonishing.
That boy's going to die.
I don't think I'll do a Billy Brownless to be crying on the boundary line, but it'll be a magnificent turnaround by the mighty Lions. But Geelong, they've got a terrific side. They'll be well rested. Dangerfield's always a problem, isn't he? He's up like a bull. He's fully energised. Geelong's coaching staff does a magnificent job to get their matchups right week in, week out. But at the end of the day, that's a pretty even matchup, I agree. So looking forward to that one.
Dog, you been called up? You been called up to commentate?
No, I haven't. I have got the VFL Grand Final this week.
Oh, right.
Yeah, which is Werribee and Southport.
Sweet.
And it was interesting. If Brisbane had won, and it was Brisbane versus Southport, the VFL Grand Final would have had two Queensland sides, would have been played up in Queensland,
where there's no broadcast equipment. They'd have to ship everything.
Everything.
Yes, Jonathan.
Brown Dog, were you concerned about the big signing of Kane Corns? Like there's one less spot on the roster for next year.
No, I'm definitely not worried. If anything, I think me and him can work,
collaborate
for
Corn Dog. I mean, Corn Dog's going to take
Starsky and Hutch style.
He teed off
Torval and Dean style.
Mate, he teed off on GWS.
Oh, he teed off on Gostradamus, Timmy Gossage. He had everyone in the gun on the weekend. So I was sitting back on the couch just before Saturday night's game, thinking, geez, they've obviously used Jude Bolton as the boundary rider this week to save airfares and accommodation because he's a Sydney guy. Just makes sense. And,
absolutely.
And lo and behold, when Lingy did the first cross, I went, hang on a second, they've got a Melbourne man up there.
Bastard.
You should have been. You should have been there Friday night, Brown Dog.
No,
your team.
Yeah, I know. No, truly. No, honestly.
A lot of your ex-teammates were pissed in the crowd.
You
were saying Isaac Smith and all the boys that had a long lunch, and they kept crossing to them and showing them in the crowd.
John, you can tell they started at Fugazi and then walked to the ground, but they were flying.
Having a big one.
You should have been there as a representative of Hawthorn.
Well, I teed up. I teed up Hawks radio for this Friday night in Sydney, should they have got through. So I was looking a week in advance as well, probably like a lot of the Hawthorn people.
Well, at the end of the day, I feel as if the boss of Channel 7, and I don't want to name him, but Chris Jones has got the new role there as the head of sport for Channel 7, and he's a very close friend with Brown Dog, and I feel as there's a bit of anti-nepotism. So when you're worried about nepotism, you're worried about favouritism, you're worried about the public looking at you saying you are favouring one of your best mates, and then all of a sudden you veer away from him. You veer away from what's the most obvious. You go Brown Dog, former premiership player on the boundary, riling up the Port Adelaide crowd. Like, what better entertainment is that?
Makes
Who
sense.
knows? If he had been out there when Kenny Hinkley was going berserk, it might have been Brown Dog, not James Sicily in between him and Jack Ginnivan. Like, Chris Jones has missed the mark. I'm telling you now.
Campbell would have been, when Hinks was popping off, Campbell would have been stirring him up like a schoolyard fight.
Yeah.
Campbell would have been like, go get him.
Like I went to a Hawthorn meeting a couple of years ago, and I sat next to the great Don Scott, right? Yes. And it was the new president, Andy Gow, was just breaking bread with everyone after what had been a tumultuous couple of years. And he opened up to the floor after addressing these rival factions that were not overly happy with the direction of the footy club. And Don Scott opened up a notepad and had his pen there. Yes. And he goes, Andy, I'd like to say a few words. And he started addressing all these dot points, right? And some of them they were heavy hitting, like hitting Andy Gow's right between the eyes. Right. And I sat there and I kept sort of just pointing at the dot points that he'd missed, right? And I was really trying to just stir him up because while everyone around him were getting uncomfortable from feeling challenged and everything, I just bathe, mate, in areas where people are feeling intimidated or...
You sit in it like a kiddie pool.
Oh, I just love it, mate. I absolutely love it. I love needling people to the point where, they feel really, really uncomfortable. Got to the point where Andy goes, hey, let's address this over a coffee another time, not in front of everyone. And I'm there going, no, mate, don't take that. Get this point out, get that point out. Hey, guess what?
Yeah.
What a world today.
After.
Bathing people's misery.
You're bathing people's shit.
In their misery.
You're
in their misery. Hey, boys.
Yeah.
Should we do Dusty before What a World?
Let's discuss it.
We'll come back.
Okay.
Ads back in a second. Welcome back to Brownies podcast. Beck, your hangover is palpable. As adults, like older people, we can give you advice. Drink water before you go to bed on a big night.
At that point, I had no thoughts in my head.
Sure.
Beck, you always have a cigarette and a can of Coke before you go to sleep. On a big night. I'm telling you, it'll bring you back from the dead. You'll wake up fresh as a daisy. You'll shoot 5 under par the next morning.
You're a ridiculous man. Hey, Dusty, is this Gold Coast thing real? What actually do we know?
Do you know who loved the article coming out? Ox. Because he's the man that was just staunch all the way through. He refused to back down. He refused to concede. And this keeps his dream alive.
Yeah.
And he might be vindicated. I personally don't think that the Gold Coast Suns need Dusty. Not at his age, not at how he finished at Richmond.
Where would he play?
What about an energised Dusty? So clearly this year he wasn't motivated. And look, you could understand it was challenging for where Richmond are at this stage of their development. That he lost that real fight and then obviously had injury problems. What about if you got a really motivated Dusty? He's had a great pre-season, he's healthy, and obviously he knows Gold Coast are heading upwards.
Yeah, they certainly, we hope they're heading upwards. Is he going to be around to help win him a flag? Like, is he going to be the Stewie Jew to Hawthorn in 08 sort of thing? I'm not sure. But
Hold on. If you put him in the forward pocket, he wouldn't be on ball, obviously, at this age. So Dusty in the forward pocket would be more valuable than whoever's there now, surely.
Potentially, but you've got to balance up whether, he'd want a certain amount of money.
300K I heard being chucked around.
Is that right?
That's pennies.
Well, at the end of the day, from what we can only be led to believe what people tell us, and they say that it's been more Dusty that's made the approach to the Suns. So obviously the Suns would do their due diligence, but the fact of the matter is, if he's made the approach, he must be willing to play for a small figure in the context of what he's been on previously, and because that's right, there's only one way he gets it done, and unfortunately for the AFL, they couldn't justify paying me much in ambassadorial money because we know Dusty is reluctant to do anything publicly, so that wouldn't work. But is it about winning the premiership, Brown Dog, or is it about building that bridge to get him to that premiership and maybe having a Dustin Martin there with his experience for a couple of years, helping him build that bridge might be enough? Yeah,
maybe. Well, I mean, the premiership would be utopia for him, but they just need a guy that is able to teach them what success looks like, because at the moment none of those players have any idea what success looks like because they've never played finals.
Yeah, I think the more people with premiership experience and finals experience on the list, if they've still got the want and the will and the health to play AFL football, I think there's more positives than negatives for where the Gold Coast list are at if he's willing to play within the salary cap.
Yep.
All right, time for
What a World. Now, this What a World actually includes me for the first time ever, because I'll tell you a little scenario.
Yes.
Every once a week, I gather around with 5 or 6 likely types, and
you put on gift masks.
We have a couple of red wines.
Yes.
And we just
snooker ball in the mouth, all those sort of things.
We just talk a little bit of shop, bit of work, bit of footy, bit of racing, bit of whatever. And every couple of weeks, we come up with a topic, right? And you go around the list, and the topic a few weeks ago was the biggest frauds in football, right? And they can be administrators, players, coaches, supporters, presidents, whatever.
Would you divulge any of that?
No, definitely not. But you do a bit of a list, and away you go. Last Thursday it was the unfunniest comedians in the world.
You're
right?
a brave man.
Oh,
so
geez.
you'd all give your selection, and then you've got 30, 40 seconds why you need to justify it.
Yep.
And then you can have some rebuttal, right? And goes on the list. So I said to the guys, next week I want to have a topic of the worst people you've met in the media, right? I think I might have used the words.
Sure.
But I'm trying to clean it up so we don't have to beep it out. So everyone went, okay, fantastic. I'm going to give you a week to think about it, and when we come back in a couple of weeks' time, you've got your selections.
Who are you going after?
So we're sitting around that night. I'm having dinner with a few friends, a few of my people that live with me at my apartment, and I disclosed the topic, right? And they said, "Oh, great topic, Browny. Who are you going to select?"
Yep.
I said, number one for me is clear as day. This bloke, absolute lunatic, blah, 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 blah. I said, you know what I might even do? I might even throw his wife and his partner as a collective, right? Because both of them,
Jesus.
I don't like, and left winger, and I'm
going the double entendre.
Double entendre, and I'm teeing off, right? And just towards the back end of my chat, the guy, very good friend of mine, he says, "Hey, Brown Dog, I want to stop you right there." And I turn and I say, "Yeah, mate, what?" He goes, "Oh, they're my godparents." Mate, what are the odds? There's 27 million people here in Australia. You're usually only the godparents of one person, right? And I've got him right next to me.
Inside, Campbell was thinking this.
So I turned to him, I said, "Look, I stand by every word I say."
That's unbelievable.
But I apologise to you because I had no idea that they were your godparents. What a world.
Psychopath. All right, degenerates. We'll talk to you later in the week before the prelims. Have a good week.
Look forward to it. All the best, degenerates.